my name is Dr. Maximilian Zart, and today we're going to be discussing rotator cuff exercises at the Healthiest Jew Chiropractic Center. So I've got a couple different weights in my hand, and everybody's going to be a little bit different. Actually, a lot of times at home, we encourage a patient to start off by using just a large family-sized soup can to do these exercises, and really you can actually do the exercise without weight. So a couple different weights, a 3-pound weight, a 5-pound weight. You never really need to go much above maybe 5 to 8 pounds. I usually don't encourage even a big, strong patient to use more than that because the muscles that we're strengthening, the muscles we're engaging are smaller muscle groups. So today I'm just going to use this 5-pound weight here. We're going to discuss some of these exercises. So these exercises are intended to strengthen and stabilize the rotator cuff. Now, along with the big deltoid muscle, the rotator cuff actually helps keep the shoulder in place. So if you're a patient that constantly has shoulder pain, or you constantly feel like your shoulder is out of place, there's a good likelihood that the rotator cuff is somehow being impacted, and these exercises may be able to help stabilize that shoulder joint. So we usually prescribe 3 exercises for each of our patients, and then there's another 2 that can sometimes be complementary to the first 3. So the first exercise I call opening the door, but basically you can put a hand on a hip and then you're going to take the weight like so, and you're just going to open the door. Now, what I have a patient do is just go from basically 0 to 90 degrees. And I want them to control the weight the entire way. I also want their arm to be at approximately a 90-degree angle. So I don't want the weight to be here, and I don't want the weight to be up here. I just want the weight right there at that nice 90-degree angle. They're opening the door and closing it. What I also don't expect a patient to do is go very, very far into rotation. Home exercises should be safe, and sometimes anywhere past 90 degrees can become unsafe. So for the sake of these exercises today, we're just going to be going from 0 to 90. At the office, or maybe at another chiropractor or physical therapist's office, you may be instructed to go beyond that, and that's not necessarily wrong. We just want to always have safety in mind when we're exercising at home. So again, this is opening the door. After that, we do a movement that I call the baseball pitcher. So you're going to hold your arm up like this so that it's parallel with the ground. And then you're just going to extend it back where it's perpendicular with the ground. This is another exercise where you don't have to go into full external rotation of the shoulder, so you don't have to go way far back the way a baseball pitcher might actually. You just have to go 90 degrees. As with the previous exercise, you may be instructed by another healthcare provider under their supervision to go beyond that, and that's completely okay. But for the sake of home exercise, keeping it in this 90-degree angle is exactly what I want. And then the last exercise we call the low 5 here, because if you open up your hand, it's almost like giving someone else a low 5 instead of a high 5. So what you don't do is you don't extend the tricep. Rather, you just take the weight from a dead hang and you extend it backwards about as far as you can. This is probably the only exercise where I instruct you to do that, where I instruct you to actually go as far back as you can reach without eliciting pain. And then back to neutral. You'll notice my arm is almost like a pendulum here. It's not necessarily bending at the elbow, it's just extending back at the shoulder. So again, this is the low 5. These first 3 exercises are exercises I prescribe for just about any patient to help stabilize the shoulder joint. Now there's 2 more exercises I'm going to show you that you might be given by myself or another healthcare provider that you visit, and I want you to be able to have a source to look at these exercises again, so I'm including them even though I might not recommend them for everyone. So the first one is going to be the opposite of opening the door. So it's going to be closing the door back down. So instead, you're kind of coming into internal rotation. Now you might think, well, when I open the door, this is the second half of it, and you're exactly right. So this is the way this looks. But sometimes these exercises are actually done with bands. And when they're done with a band, you're going to have the band attached out somewhere along here, and then you're going to pull against that band. What I usually don't prescribe is having the band attached in the other direction and pulling against it this way, unless there's a specific condition that calls for that, for closing the door. Now, the other way you could theoretically do this is to do internal rotation this way. But but this movement can tend to elicit pain for patients, and sometimes it's not necessarily done safely at home. So I usually do not recommend doing the opposite of the baseball pitcher unless you're instructed to do so by a healthcare professional. Now the last exercise I want to show is actually just a lateral raise. Now a lot of you may have done this in a gym before. It actually helps strengthen the deltoid more than the rotator cuff, and that's why I say it's not necessarily part of my big three, but it is a great exercise to help stabilize the shoulder. It's very simple. Usually you're just going to keep your arms at that bent 90-degree angle, and you're just going to draw it out to where your arm is parallel with the ground. You do not have to go above that. In fact, this could create impingement in the shoulder and isn't necessarily what you want. We just want to, again, keep that arm at a nice parallel aspect to the ground. So we're just going from the hip, outward, and back, just like a wing. Now, again, the only reason I don't include this exercise in with my rotator cuff exercises is because the majority of this movement is more of a deltoid exercise than a rotator cuff exercise, with only a very small aspect of it being relating to the rotator cuff itself. So this lateral raise can be wonderful for you, and it's a great aesthetic exercise because it helps develop this deltoid, but it's not necessarily lumped in with our true rotator cuff exercises. So these are some different ways you can train your shoulder and rotator cuff to create stability and strength in the area to avoid injury in the future. If you have any questions about how to perform these exercises, please don't hesitate to call or email me at the Healthy Issue Chiropractic Center.